It's Lemonade with Aplomb, where we talk to leaders about challenges that they face. What do they do when they're handed lemons? And Kyle Dodson, welcome to Lemonade with Aplomb.
Good morning, Jason. Thank you, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Honor is all mine. These are hard times. How are things going?
This is true. It's sort of like a tale of two worlds, right? The really incredible positive is the grit and resilience of our community, of our YMCA staff, our members. Everyone's hanging in there. A lot of positivity. That's incredible. But you turn on the news every morning, and it's a bit daunting.
It is.
So it's. I think, quite frankly, I think it's a good human exercise for us to have to deal with uncertainty and managing ambiguity. I think that's really the human condition, and we try at great length to avoid that. But I think that's our reality. That's kind of life and humanity. So although it's challenging, I think it's probably a good test for us.
Yeah, and you were just telling me about a time that you had some personal challenges that you kind of had an epiphany and were able to overcome them.
That is correct, and I point to it as probably my greatest period of growth, personally and professionally in my life, but also the most humbling and challenging. And that's probably, the latter is probably why I experienced the former, right? That the fact that it was challenging is the thing that allowed me to grow so much.
So share the story.
Sure, I will. So I'm going to just create a little bit of setting because I think it helps to inform the story. So quickly, I grew up in New Jersey, and I would say that I had parents who benefited from the post-World War kind of boom and opportunities that others did. They both got with good companies. Neither of them had the opportunity to go to college, but they worked themselves up to management, and they moved from probably working poor to a point where we were probably solidly middle class by the time I was a teenager. We had a nice home in a suburb. We had 2 cars. We went on modest vacations. So that's kind of my setting where I came from. And then through their hard work and some good fortune, I had a chance to go to Harvard. And I hope the story will help move that from what might seem to be self-aggrandizement to important setting for the story. So the experience that I had was when I went to Boston to be part of a training program to train people to be urban principals. In this case, in Boston, but doing the work in urban communities that are overwhelmingly Black and brown, overwhelmingly low income, face a lot of challenges, crime and drugs and family breakdown, etc. And it was in Dorchester, which is a subsection of Boston, which is one of the most challenged neighborhoods, arguably Dorchester and Roxbury. So also the highest concentration of Blacks and Latinos in Boston, probably in those two communities. So I went there, and part of the setup of Harvard is Harvard's probably 5 miles at most as the crow flies, but literally worlds away from Dorchester. So I went there, and when I was an undergrad, I quite frankly didn't spend much, if any, time in Dorchester. Wasn't terribly aware of it. I'm not a native Boston person. I just wasn't aware. And the insulation that existed at Harvard made it so that Dorchester was not a common topic of conversation. Fast forward many years later, I went down there to train to be a principal. And the outcome was I went in retrospect, I realized with a little too much hubris and self-belief in what I represented and what I could do. I came in thinking that my education was meant more than it did in the context of the challenges there. I had the experience of having an ability to get in front of people and speak and have a certain amount of charisma, had served me fairly well in other professional and personal environments. And the interesting thing and the slap in the face was it didn't really matter in Dorchester. They could care less about where I went to school. They could care less about how I showed up in front of the camera. They wanted help supporting their children in reading and writing and numeracy, as they should have. Yeah. So I learned a lot about the depth of challenges that poverty has imposed on communities, and that it takes a lot more than a good soundbite or a fancy background or even the will to get it done. Those aren't adequate to meet the challenge. Right. But during that period, I think we achieved a few things in the school I was principal of. I ultimately became a principal in Dorchester of a early childhood and elementary school. And it helped me to understand the power of early childhood education and made me a strong advocate for that. And someone who has a little bit of insight, at least, into that domain and what's possible there and why all children should have it. It helped me to more deeply connect with my community, the Black and Brown community, at a level that, quite frankly, my parents' hard work and opportunities they afforded me put me in a position where I didn't spend daily time in the kind of communities where Blacks and Latinos still really struggle and have not had the opportunities that my parents had. And so that was really an eye-opener and something that was critical for me. And it set me on the course of knowing that my life's work was community development, getting inside communities, working with people to learn about what things can we do in the community itself and at the advocacy level to help people change their lives.
And that's a powerful story, because a lot of times for folks who have achieved a lot, whether it's Harvard or a fancy job title or some accomplishment in life, that we can say, well, that's evidence that I'm awesome and I have good intentions. I really want to help, or I really want to be powerful. And a lot of people respond, well, what have you done for me lately? You know, where's the actual work? Don't tell me about your resume. Don't tell me about your background, but come forward and dig in and do the work.
That's right. I mean, talk is cheap, right?
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line is, you know, you remember, Jason, I don't know if our viewers will, but there was this commercial about where's the beef.
Right.
And there was this idea of where's the beef. We got a lot of fluff here, but where's the beef? And this experience taught me that at the end of the day, it's what you do. It's what you create. It's what you're able to execute. It's the outcomes you produce that matter. And all the rest is just window dressing.
Yeah. And so now you have a lot of work with the YMCA. It's back open, but it had been closed for many months. And we're a member of the Y.
Excellent.
I haven't been back, but I think I'm gonna do it this week, just if for nothing else, the air conditioning. Oh my God, it's hot.
It is hot.
A little more lemonade.
Yes.
But tell me about what you faced and how and I'd be curious if there's a connection with your earlier experience with how you were able to bring it forward and deliver.
That's a great question. I appreciate that question, Jason. The first thing is what my prior experience taught me was the value of a team. And at the end of the day, organizations need a set of capacities, the capacity to do certain things. Mm-hmm. And it isn't necessarily incumbent upon a given leader to have all those qualities. They just have to make sure that the organization gets those capacities filled.
Yeah.
And so it's actually efficient and I think better for the organization that the leader has to delegate to people who have strengths that they don't have. In my current situation, I have 5 people I work with, all of whom bring a different set of skills to the table. And they sort of prop me up and make it possible for me to concentrate on what I think are my strengths. And that really, I think, helps to serve the organization. And then they fill in a lot of the gaps I don't have so that the net the organization gets everything it needs. So that's the backdrop.
Are there specific strategies that you're using, particularly in the time of social distancing, to support your team?
Great question. So one thing we do is, so I'll go one level down. So that team, we almost function like a brain trust, which, you know, I'm first amongst equals. So I do have a trump card because I'm the CEO, but I think it's a pretty flat structure and I rely on them and give them a lot of input. So one thing we do is communication. So it's a very uncertain time. And in organizations, as an organizational development coach, you know that if you do some sort of survey of employee attitudes, better communication is always there. No matter how good the company is, it is all, and it's top 1 or 2, maybe 3, right? And so it's just, you can't do it too much. So luckily, one of those people on my team is a media communications person. So we send out weekly messages that go to members, go to staff, go to the board, We've instituted videos, which people really appreciate in time of COVID. So we'll send the message out, but I'll be on video, different places of the building, sharing the message. So that what can seem like a small thing has been the degree of appreciation is really kind of striking to me in a positive way, but people love it. And I get feedback almost every message. So that's one thing that we do. We've developed please.
If I could just interject for one moment, the letter that you wrote about George Floyd was so powerful, and I actually shared it with on my social media. So thank you for doing that. And that constant communication, it's so important that people know, especially when we're social distancing, to check in even more and to let them know what you're thinking, because a lot of times staff just feel like, I don't know what's going on. And it's like, well, we're just working. But sometimes when you're like the CEO, you forget to fill everyone in, and they think that you're withholding something, but you're not.
Yes, that's exactly right. And just as you point that out, Jason, this need for more connection during this time, I encountered early on. I believe there's a movement during our shelter in place where someone changed the nomenclature from social distancing to physical distancing. We need to physically distance,
Yes.
but we need to actually socially double down on connection.
Yeah.
People are feeling isolated, alienated, and so we needed to figure out ways with technology oftentimes to increase the connection. And so we strive to do that. Another thing I think that's a really important leadership thing is trust, right? So this team, I tell you about, that leadership team, I think has developed an incredible amount of trust. So they know that I trust them, and in that space, there's vulnerability. So there's times when people cry because they're moved by something, often moved by some testimony of the results that our work creates. So someone in our midst, a member usually, writes something back to us, and it just moves us because it's amazing that that person has been able to improve their mental health, physical health, spiritual well-being, family setup, something, and it touches us that we're privileged to do work that has that kind of outcome. But back to the challenges, please. Do you have a question, Jason, or?
No, go right ahead. You're doing great.
Thank you. So back to the challenges. So one thing that from the beginning, we as a leadership team looked at it and said, this crisis is comprehensive. I would say in our lifetime, nothing like it, right? People go back to the Spanish flu of 1918, but even something like the World Trade Center bombing, which was horrific and traumatic, it happened in a location, right? And then it rippled out. But if you were in Wyoming, you didn't have the immediate effect. But this crisis, this virus hits everywhere. It has the potential to hit everywhere. Every demographic, everyone is vulnerable to this. And so that feels, in my 54 years, something pretty unique. So early on at the Y, we said, as much as we were scared for us, we didn't want to come out and start sounding the alarm and start pumping people for philanthropy in a moment when everyone's struggling. We thought our role was to serve and be there for the community and realize and respect that everyone's struggling. We got to get through this thing, and then we'll worry about the rebuilding when that time comes. So as a result, that really hurt our income because we rely on membership, and we put everyone's membership on hold. So all of those fees that would come in that would help us pay for everything was gone. We shut down. We had a little bit of essential care, essential worker care. So some hospital employees, we kept early child care for them, and we had a little school age care. So K to 5, K to 6-year-old kids. We had some centers that were open to support them. But otherwise, every other function of the Y was closed. So it was really looking bleak. We actually furloughed the majority of the staff for a 2-week period, but then the payment protection program came in. So we only had to have that 2-week furlough, and most of those people were on unemployment, and the unemployment benefit was pretty generous, so that effectively with the extra $600 made the ceiling was about 51 grand annualized, and the reality is that covers most Y employees. That covers a lot of Y employees. So most people were able to stay whole through unemployment. And then PPP money came from the feds, and we were one of the early applicants. We have a great relationship with Northfield Savings Bank. Give a little plug here. They're one of our local banks we have a great relationship with. And so we got that money, and then from that period through June 1, we were able to pay everybody.
So thinking ahead for the, I mean, as much as you can look into your crystal ball, what do you see for the Y over the next, what do you think, 3 to 6 months, or how long can you even think out?
Yeah, so that used to be, I think minimally, we need to be thinking about 12 to 18, because that's still the forecast that I hear for COVID.
Right.
Because although we're accelerating vaccine, most people still see the vaccine probably where it can be readily available, safe, mass produced, and mass kind of given to the people.
Right.
Um,
So what does that look like?
is that probably that time frame? So that's what we need to think about. Now, in the short term, we are experiencing something that's been a wonderful surprise, and that is, like yourself, members are staying with us even if they're not using the facility. So we are probably about 15% down in membership, which still hurts, right? So the budget's predicated on 100%. So 15% is not an insignificant hit, but it's certainly less than we had anticipated, and it's not hurting us as much as some other businesses. We're lucky. So I have this idea about what I call volume and density dependent organizations, right? So we thrive when we have a high volume of customers and they're densely packed into our gym, because that maximizes, and we have a huge facility with massive capacity, and the facility has costs that are fairly fixed. So we need to get a certain volume and density to hit those costs, and then have a little extra money to give scholarships, et cetera. Just like restaurants, right? So when we reopened the economy a little bit and started easing, there's a lot of organizations that didn't really help, because if you're a restaurant that has 75 seats and you can only do 25% of that, which is what, 20-ish, you're struggling, because you've got costs. You got to have someone in the kitchen. You got to still clean. You got to pay your mortgage. You got to do all these things.
Right.
And 25% of capacity doesn't really help you. So that's kind of the struggle we're in. But the Y has, because of our membership and people and members like you staying with us, we're hanging in there. We did unfortunately have to furlough some people because there's businesses we're just not doing. We didn't open our summer overnight camp. We didn't open some of our summer day camps. So there are things that we aren't doing, that personal training really cut back because of the restrictions. So some of those areas where there's no revenue coming in, we just didn't have the reserves to keep those people. And luckily, the unemployment circumstance right now is such that people can, I think, get support from the government that can help them kind of bridge this time between now and when we're in a little better economic shape.
Right. Well, do you have any final thoughts about the Y in the future, and something to leave us with?
I do. You mentioned earlier, which I appreciate, the George Floyd statement that the Y put out. And that's really a new opportunity for the Y that we are trying to take full advantage of. So the YMCA is a 150-year-old movement in the States, and many Ys exist in urban communities. They're actually, like many other American organizations, there were these organizations that were Black YMCAs. So the YMCA, like other organizations, has a segregated past. But that is to say, that's an unfortunate way that the service happened, but the Y has been serving Black communities forever, for most of its existence.
Yeah.
And so I point that out to say that anti-racist work, diversity, equity, inclusion work is very common in many Ys around the country, because that's the community they're in. That's the work that needs to be done.
Yeah.
For our Y, it hasn't been as prominent, quite frankly. But this moment gives us a chance to move closer to our values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. And there's another mantra we say: all means all at the Y. Everyone, no exclusions, no bias, no prejudice.
Yeah.
We welcome all. So we're taking this moment to increase our work in anti-racism. We're going to be flying the Black Lives Matter flag any day now. It just came in. And I want to make it clear, we don't expect like a pat on the back or a star on our forehead for that. It's way overdue. But it is a movement for us. The Black Lives Matter flag should have flown earlier. It didn't. And I make no excuses for that. But, you start where you start. And right now is where we're starting to really increase our efforts in that area. So stay tuned. We're going to be looking for opportunities to host conversations, host readings, host speakers, and more importantly, partner with the Burlington Public School System, partner with the hospital, and start doing concrete things around achievement gap. around health disparities, hopefully around income disparities. Once again, as we said earlier in this conversation, talk is cheap. So please hold us accountable because we intend to be a concrete part of moving us forward.
Well, I love that you brought it back to where we started of delivering and making it real and not just platitudes and statements that a lot of companies are issuing saying we support this, but we're not going to do anything differently. And I also love the fact that you mentioned your the YMCA's values, because when I go to the Y, I see them up on the wall. And
glad to hear it.
But it's not just lip service. I'm hearing you say, and that translates into these actions. So way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Just a quick
Kyle.
plug.
It's been great talking with you.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
You as well.